The day I found out my husband bought his secretary a Lamborghini with my dowry money, my entire world shattered. But maybe, if I'm honest, the cracks had always been there. I just chose not to see them. My name is Anaya, and this is the story of how I gave everything to a man who turned out to value a shiny sports car and another woman over me. But more importantly, this is also the story of how I found myself again. When I first met Araf, my husband, I was 23, freshly graduated, still full of dreams and painfully naive about the ways of the world. He was everything I thought I wanted: handsome, sharp, confident, and with an ambition that lit up every room he walked into. I remember the first time he walked up to me at a friend's engagement party. His suit was perfectly tailored, his smile practiced, but his words, oh, his words were like silk. Anaya, isn't it? You don't belong in the corner of a room. Someone like you should be in the center, where everyone can see you. At that moment, I felt like I was seen for the first time. Like he had peeled away the shy, quiet version of me that people usually overlooked. We began dating shortly after, and as months turned into a year, his charm only deepened. He took me to fancy dinners, introduced me to his influential friends, and painted a future of limitless possibilities. But what really won me over was how he spoke about family. He said he believed in building an empire, but one that stood on loyalty, partnership, and trust. Words I craved to hear because deep inside, I was someone who always dreamed of a strong, unbreakable marriage. My parents adored him. They believed he was the kind of man who would protect me, uplift me, and give me the life I deserved. So when the topic of marriage came up, my family was more than willing to contribute. In our culture, dowry wasn't uncommon. My father, a respected businessman himself, wanted to ensure that I entered my new life with stability. He provided Araf with a generous dowry, enough to buy a house, a car, and still have capital to invest in his business. I remember the day of our wedding vividly. I was dressed in red silk, my hands painted with henna, my heart brimming with hope. Araf looked like a prince, his smile as dazzling as ever. As we circled the sacred fire, I truly believed our love was blessed, eternal. At first, everything seemed perfect. We moved into a luxurious penthouse apartment with tall glass windows overlooking the city. Araf worked tirelessly, often late into the night, but he always returned with gifts: diamond earrings, designer handbags, shoes worth more than a month's salary for most people. Don't ever think you're not cherished, Anaya, he would say, slipping a necklace around my neck. You're my queen. And for a while, I believed him. I believed his long hours at the office were proof of his dedication. I believed his absence at family dinners meant he was sacrificing for our future. I believed every excuse he gave for why he couldn't spend time with me, but belief is a fragile thing. It only takes a few cracks to let the truth seep through. It started with whispers, the women at social events, the subtle comments that carried a sharp edge. Have you seen Arab's new secretary? She's stunning. They say he never goes anywhere without her. Well, she certainly dresses more like a wife than an employee. At first, I brushed it off. Every successful man had admirers, didn't he? Araf was handsome, wealthy, and ambitious. It was only natural that people gossiped. But then I began to notice things myself. Whenever I called him at the office, it was always she who answered first. Her voice was too familiar, too comfortable. She laughed at his jokes, sometimes even finished his sentences. And when I visited him at work, I saw the way her eyes lingered on him a little too long, the way his smile softened in her direction. Still, I convinced myself I was imagining it. After all, Araf loved me, didn't he? He had married me, not her. But love, I would later learn, is not measured in gifts, nor in grand gestures. It is measured in respect, in loyalty, in presence. And in those, Araf was beginning to fall short. The distance between us grew slowly, like a thread unraveling one stitch at a time. He came home later and later, sometimes not at all. Our conversations became surface level weather, social events, investments. Never feelings, never us. I tried to bridge the gap. I planned romantic dinners, suggested weekend getaways, even surprised him at his office once with homemade lunch. He smiled politely, thanked me, and then excused himself because he had an urgent meeting. A meeting, I later realized, that was with her. The breaking point came on an evening that started out ordinary. I had just returned from visiting my parents. My mother had fussed over me as usual, filling my bags with homemade sweets and reminding me to take care of myself first. I laughed, brushing her off, still clinging to the illusion that everything in my marriage was fine. But when I walked into our penthouse that night, the illusion shattered. Araf wasn't home, but his phone was. It buzzed relentlessly on the table, lit up with a message preview I couldn't ignore. Thank you for the car, Araf. You really didn't have to. But I love it. Can't wait to take you for a spin. And my heart stopped. Car? What car? I picked up the phone, my hands trembling, and scrolled through the messages. And there it was. Clear as day photos of a brand new Lamborghini Huracan, gleaming under showroom lights. Captions of excitement, messages of affection, and one message that broke me completely. You said it was from her dowry money. Guess it finally came to good use. I dropped the phone as if it had burned me. My knees gave way, and I sank to the floor, gasping for air. My dowry. The money my father had given him to secure our future. The money that was supposed to be the foundation of our marriage. He had used it to buy his secretary a luxury sports car. That was the night something inside me died, but it was also the night something else was born. I didn't know it then, but that Lamborghini was not just a car. It was the key to my freedom, because from that moment on, I vowed he would never see me broken again. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, lights dimmed, the city glittering outside the tall glass windows, while inside, my world turned into a cold, hollow shell. The Lamborghini gleamed in those photos, every curve mocking me, every dollar of my dowry screaming betrayal. I kept asking myself the same questions on repeat. Why? Why her? Why my money? Why did I never see it coming? But deep down, I knew the truth. The signs had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Be why the time dawn broke. I had made a decision. I wasn't going to sit quietly. I was going to confront him. He returned home the next morning, still in the same suit from the day before, the faint smell of expensive perfume clinging to him. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, but his face carried that same arrogant confidence I used to mistake for charm. Araf, I said, standing in the doorway of the living room, clutching his phone in my hand. My voice was steady, but inside, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. He glanced at me, then at the phone. His expression didn't change. He didn't even look guilty. You went through my phone? He asked calmly, as if I had just committed the bigger sin. I found the messages, I said. My voice cracked, but I kept going. The Lamborghini, the photos, the words. You used my dowry, Araf. You used my dowry to buy her a car. For the first time, a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Not guilt, not shame, just irritation. As if I had ruined some carefully crafted plan. She deserves it, he said finally, loosening his tie. SIA has stood by me, worked late nights, sacrificed more than you could ever imagine. She's been my real partner in business. Partner in business. I repeated, choking on the words. Is that what you call it? Buying her a Lamborghini? With the money my father gave you for us, for our future. He sighed, as though I were a child throwing a tantrum. Don't be dramatic, Anaya. You wouldn't understand the kind of pressure I'm under. The car, it's an investment, a reward, something to keep her motivated. She's invaluable to me. I stared at him in disbelief. My hands shook. My nails dug into my palm until I nearly bled, but I didn't let myself cry. Not in front of him. And what am I, Araf? I whispered. What am I to you? That's when he looked at me. Really looked. And the words that came out of his mouth would haunt me forever. You're just the wife. You're tradition, stability, the one who makes my family respect me. But her, she's the one who makes me feel alive. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. I thought I'd break down right there. But something inside me hardened instead. His words didn't just hurt, they burned, searing away the last fragments of illusion I had clung to. I wasn't his partner. I was his image, his shield, his pawn, and he didn't even care that I knew it now. That evening, I saw her for the first time outside the office. I had gone there, foolishly thinking maybe I could still reason with him, maybe still salvage what little was left. But as I stood in the marble lobby, she walked past me with a set of keys dangling from her manicured fingers. They glittered with the Lamborghini logo. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy laughing into her phone, her voice light and carefree. Yes, baby, I'll pick you up after work. We'll go for a drive. The city lights will look amazing from behind the wheel. Her words stabbed me, every syllable a blade. And then she saw me. Our eyes locked. Hers were bold, unashamed, almost triumphant. She smirked an expression that said everything without words. I won. He chose me. For a moment, my knees nearly gave way. I wanted to scream, to tear those keys from her hands, to tell the entire lobby what she had done. But instead, I lifted my chin, turned, and walked away. Because in that moment, I realized something powerful. Humiliation doesn't destroy you, it transforms you. That night, Araf came home late again. He found me sitting quietly at the dining table, untouched food in front of me. He didn't even ask why I hadn't eaten. He just poured himself a drink and said, "Don't make this harder than it is, Anaya. You're overreacting. This is how powerful men live. Wives like you, women like her. Balance, balance." That word echoed in my ears like poison. To him, I was balance. A piece on a chessboard. A placeholder while he indulged his desires. I didn't argue. Not then. Because I understood something he didn't. He thought I was powerless. He thought my silence meant defeat. But my silence that night wasn't surrender. It was the calm before the storm, because if he could betray me so brazenly, then he had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to the edge. As I lay in bed that night, his back turned to me, his phone buzzing quietly with her messages, I made a vow to myself. This was the end of us, not because he declared it, Not because she smirked at me, but because I chose it, and he would never see it coming. The morning after I made that silent vow, the world looked different. Not because the sun was brighter or the city quieter, but because I had changed. Something inside me had shifted. I was no longer the naive girl who thought love could be earned through sacrifice. I was no longer the wife who begged for scraps of attention from a man who saw me as a trophy. I was awake, and when you wake up from a dream, no matter how beautiful it once seemed, you can't go back to sleep. I began watching him more closely. Not in desperation anymore, but in calculation. The way he talked on the phone. The way he kept his laptop screen tilted away from me. The way he suddenly started locking the home office door, a door that had never been locked before. I noticed his tone change when he spoke to us, playful, indulgent, even affectionate. And his tone with me, cold, business-like, almost like I was an obligation. I stopped asking questions, stopped trying to start conversations, stopped planning dinners or texting him reminders about anniversaries, and he didn't notice. That was how far gone we were. I remember sitting in front of my vanity one afternoon, brushing my hair in silence, staring into the mirror. My reflection didn't look broken anymore. It looked determined. I thought of my father. How proud he'd been to give that dowry. How he believed he was giving me a strong future, not funding someone else's luxury car. And for the first time, the shame I felt turned into fuel. This wasn't just about a marriage. This was about dignity, and I was going to get mine back. So I began to rebuild, quietly, secretly, strategically. I dug out my old laptop from before the marriage, the one I had tucked away in a box after Araf insisted, "You don't need to work. I earn enough for both of us." That sentence, which once felt like love, now felt like a cage. I logged in. The familiar screen felt like home. I reopened my RSUM, updated it, cleaned it up, and then I started applying, not to big corporations, where Araf had influence, but to small, independent firms, startups, NGOs, creative agencies, places where my name meant something, not his. At first, the responses were slow. I hadn't worked in years. But then, one woman replied. Her name was Mira. She ran a boutique PR firm. She'd seen my profile and liked my writing samples. We met at a coffee shop, and for the first time in years, I introduced myself without attaching Araf's name. Hi, I'm Anaya. I'm a communications strategist. I took a break for personal reasons, but I'm ready to work again. She smiled. You've got the voice. You've got the insight. We'll start small, but I think you'll do great. I could have cried right there. But instead, I nodded, calm and composed, because I knew this was step one. I didn't tell Araf. When he asked where I was going in the mornings, I said, pilots. When I stayed up late at night, I told him I was watching documentaries. In reality, I was working, building, reclaiming the version of me that existed before him. I began earning again. Not much at first, but enough to remind myself that I was capable, and with every invoice I sent, with every campaign I completed, I felt something return my confidence, my fire, my worth. Meanwhile, Araf continued on as if nothing had changed. He still stayed out late, still took weekend trips for business, still referred to SIA as my right hand, but cracks were forming in his empire. One afternoon, while I was working from a CAF, I overheard two men discussing a business acquisition. I wasn't eavesdropping, just sipping my coffee until I heard a familiar name. Araf Kapoor's firm is drowning, one of them said. Too much expansion, not enough liquidity. I heard he's in talks to sell off a major stake. My heart skipped. Drowning, I quickly checked the business news sites. There it was, subtle headlines, not mainstream yet, but the signs were there. His company was over-leveraged. His investors were nervous, and there were whispers of fraud. I didn't know the details yet, but I knew this. He was in trouble. And he hadn't told me a thing. That night, when he came home, I watched him closely. His suit looked perfect, his hair immaculate. But his eyes, they were tired. He didn't notice I was observing him. He never did any more. Instead, he poured himself another glass of scotch and sat in silence. I almost said, "Is everything okay at work?" But then I stopped myself. Why should I be the one to offer comfort to a man who had betrayed me? Why should I play the role of the concerned wife when he had long replaced me with someone else? No, let him deal with it. Alone, that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I realized something powerful. He had used my dowry to buy her a Lamborghini. But I was using my silence to build my escape. And soon, very soon, I would no longer need him for anything. The more I rebuilt in silence, the more Arav's world seemed to unravel. He didn't realize I knew. Didn't realize I had overheard those whispers at the CAF or that I had started piecing things together. He still looked at me the same way he always had, like someone who would never leave, never fight back, never dare to challenge him. And so, one evening, he tried. I was working quietly at the dining table when he walked in, unusually early. He poured himself a drink, then sat across from me. His expression was calm, but there was a hint of strain around his eyes. "Anaya," he began smoothly, "I've been thinking. You know how supportive your father has always been of us, how much he believes in my vision." I froze, but kept my expression neutral. Millimeters he leaned forward, lowering his voice into that persuasive tone he used in business deals. "There's a new project I'm leading. It's going to be huge, transformative. But I need capital, temporary capital. If you could talk to your father, maybe convince him to lend us another sum, just for a short while, we'd be set. We'd double it in no time." I stared at him. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I had heard correctly. He wanted more. More of my family's money. "After everything, you already had my dowry," I said slowly, keeping my voice steady. "And what did you do with it, Araf?" His jaw tightened. "Anaya, don't bring that up again. That was different. That was you buying your secretary a Lamborghini." I cut him off, my tone sharp. For a second, his mask slipped. His eyes flickered with rage before he quickly recovered, forcing a smile. "You're overreacting. I've told you before it was a business incentive. She's valuable to the company, and I'm not." I asked softly. He hesitated. Then he leaned back, exhaled, and said with icy calm, "You're valuable in other ways. Don't forget your place." That sentence cut deeper than the Lamborghini ever did. Don't forget your place. My place. According to him, my place was to provide money when asked, to smile at social events, to stay silent while he paraded his mistress around like an equal. But here's what he didn't know. My silence wasn't obedience. It was strategy. 2 days later, I saw her again. I had gone to pick up some documents from the office for Mira's firm, and as fate would have it, Esai was in the lobby. She was dressed in an elegant white dress, her heels clicking against the marble, her hair cascading in glossy waves, and there they were again, those keys. The Lamborghini logo catching the light as she twirled them around her finger like a trophy. She spotted me instantly. Her lips curled into that smirk, the one that had haunted me since the first time. But this time, she walked right up to me. "You should talk to your husband," she said casually, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "He's under a lot of stress. I keep telling him to cut ties that hold him back. A clean slate is always better, don't you think?" I blinked at her, every word sinking in. She wasn't just flaunting now. She was threatening. "You mean me?" I said, my voice calm, though my heart thundered in my chest. She tilted her head, her smile widening. "You're smart. That's why it hurts you more. But look at the bright side, you'll still have his name. And maybe he'll leave you with enough to live on. Isn't that generous?" I wanted to slap her, scream at her, tell her she was nothing but a passing phase. But instead, I did the one thing she didn't expect. I smiled, not a big smile, just a small, measured curve of my lips, and I said, "Thank you. That's good advice." Then I turned and walked away, because she didn't need to know. Not yet. That night, Araf brought it up again. "Anaya," he said, swirling his glass of whiskey, "Esai thinks we should formalize things. You know, give her a bigger role in the company. Maybe even in my life." I stayed silent. He studied me, waiting for an outburst, for tears, for a fight. But I gave him nothing. Finally, he sneered. "I knew you wouldn't understand. That's the difference between you and her. She sees the bigger picture. You just cling to titles," and with that, he left the room. I sat in the silence, my hands folded neatly in my lap, my face expressionless, because the truth was, he had no idea that I was already documenting everything. No idea that I was already preparing accounts, gathering evidence, speaking quietly to lawyers in the background. No idea that every word he said, every cruel dismissal, every misuse of funds, was ammunition. He thought he was dismantling me, but really, I was building the case that would dismantle him. For the first time since the Lamborghini, I felt a strange kind of calm, because I realized this wasn't about love anymore. This wasn't even about betrayal. This was about strategy, and Araf had no idea. I was better at playing this game than he ever imagined. I didn't go back to my father's house that night. I stayed in a small hotel near the riverside, the kind of place no one would expect me to be. My father would be worried, yes, but if I went back home, it would only confirm Daniel's belief that he still had a claim over me. I needed space, somewhere quiet to breathe and think. That night, I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling. My heart was a storm of emotions: betrayal, anger, but also something unexpected, a strange clarity. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't drowning in Daniel's shadow. The next morning, I called my father. His voice cracked with worry. "Where are you, sweetheart? Daniel came here last night looking for you. He said you stormed off." He looked nervous. That was new. "I'm safe, Dad. I just need time away from him. Please don't tell him where I am." There was silence, then a sigh. "You sound stronger than yesterday. If this is what you need, I'll protect your choice." I smiled faintly. My father had always been my shield, but I realized something important. I had to learn to shield myself now. Later that day, I returned to the city. I didn't go to the mansion. Instead, I went to my lawyer's office. The decision had been burning in me all night. When I sat across from Mr. Collins, the man who had handled my family's business for years, I said, "I want a divorce." His brows rose slightly, though he hid his shock well. "Are you certain, Mrs. Grant?" "More certain than I've been about anything in years." He pulled out documents, explaining what could be done legally, but I only half listened. My mind was fixed on one image, Daniel's smug face when he gifted her that car with my dowry. He thought I would stay silent. He thought I was powerless. No. That part of me was gone, but leaving Daniel wasn't going to be as clean as signing papers. He was ruthless, and more importantly, his pride wouldn't let him be the man who was left. That night, he finally found me. I was stepping out of the lawyer's office when his car pulled up. Not the Lamborghini, thankfully, but his black Mercedes. He got out, jaw clenched, eyes burning. "Lily," he said, striding toward me. "What the hell are you doing here?" I didn't flinch. "What do you think I'm doing?" "I'm getting my freedom back." His lips curved in a dangerous smile, though his eyes stayed cold. "Freedom? Don't play games. You're my wife. You think walking into some lawyer's office erases that? Your actions erased that, Daniel," I snapped. "The moment you used my dowry to buy your mistress a car, you destroyed everything between us." For a flicker of a second, his confident mask slipped. He hadn't expected me to confront him so directly, not in public, not without trembling. "Get in the car," he ordered, his voice low. "We'll talk privately." I shook my head. "No, I'm done talking behind closed doors where you twist the truth. If you want to talk, we'll do it in the open. No more secrets." His jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. For the first time, I realized something. Daniel wasn't just furious, he was afraid. Afraid of what I would do next. That night, back at the hotel, I received a text from an unknown number. It read, "He doesn't just use women. He ruins them. Don't let him ruin you. Meet me tomorrow. I'll tell you everything." The sender, unknown. But I had a gut feeling. It was her, the secretary. I woke up the next morning with a strange heaviness in my chest. My mind kept replaying the sight of the Lamborghini, the whispered rumors, the secretary's smug smile. Yet, instead of crumbling into despair, something inside me began to harden. A realization slowly crept in. I had been silent for too long, passive for too long, forgiving for too long. I went downstairs for breakfast, expecting the usual awkward silence. But today, Richard wasn't at the table. Instead, only one of the maids stood nervously by the doorway, glancing between me and the untouched food. "Where is he?" I asked quietly. "Sir, left early," she muttered. "He said he had an important meeting." Important meeting. My lips curled bitterly. I didn't need anyone to spell it out for me. His so-called meetings had become a convenient cover for his double life. But this time, I wasn't going to let him slip away so easily. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of an old friend, Leah. She wasn't just a friend. She was my childhood companion, my confidant, and most importantly, an investigative journalist. When she answered, her voice was groggy. "Elena, what's wrong?" "It's barely 8 a.m. I need your help," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about Richard and his secretary." There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. Leah had known me for years. She didn't need the details to understand the storm that must have been brewing inside me. "Where do I meet you?" she asked immediately. That afternoon, I sat across from her at a small cafe, the kind where the smell of freshly brewed coffee clung to the air, and the clinking of cups offered a strange comfort. She leaned forward, notebook in hand. "Tell me everything." And I did. I told her about the dowry, the Lamborghini, the whispered conversations, the stares that followed me in society gatherings. By the time I finished, my throat was dry and my hands were trembling. Leah's expression was unreadable. "So you want me to dig into this?" I nodded. "I need proof. Not just for me, for the world. If he's been spending my dowry to buy her luxury gifts, I want it exposed. I want him to feel the humiliation he so carelessly threw at me." She smiled faintly, a fire lighting up her eyes. "Elena, you've come to the right person." Over the next few days, Leah and her team worked quietly, discreetly. She sent me updates, photographs of Richard entering a private villa with the secretary, receipts that tied the purchase of the Lamborghini directly to a bank account linked to my dowry, even hotel bills in cities where Richard had claimed to be on business trips. Every new revelation was a stab to the heart. But instead of weakening me, it fueled a new kind of strength. And then came the twist I never expected. One night, Leah called me, her voice trembling with urgency. "Elena, I think you need to sit down for this." My grip tightened on the phone. "What is it?" "It's not just your dowry," she whispered. "Richard has been funneling money out of your joint accounts too. Large amounts. And Elena, some of it leads to offshore accounts under the secretary's name." The world tilted for a moment. My chest tightened as if someone had punched me. He wasn't just betraying me emotionally, he was bleeding me dry financially. My marriage wasn't just broken, it was being stolen from me, piece by piece, while he smiled at me across the dinner table and pretended everything was fine. And for the first time in years, I knew exactly what I had to do. I thought the worst was behind me after filing for divorce. But little did I know, the storm was only beginning. Daniel's reaction wasn't calm. No, he erupted like a volcano when my lawyer handed him the divorce papers. He stormed into my parents' house, uninvited, shouting accusations that shook the walls. "Emily, how dare you?" he bellowed. "You think you can walk away from me after everything I've given you?" I stood firm, though my hands trembled. "Given me? You mean the lies, the betrayal, the Lamborghini you bought for her with my dowry? Money?" His face twisted, somewhere between rage and shame. But instead of apologizing, he laughed bitterly. "You're nothing without me. Who do you think you are? Do you think men will line up for a divorced woman? You'll come crawling back." That line, that single, venom-filled line seared itself into my heart. He wanted me to believe I was powerless without him. But he had no idea I was just beginning to rise. The next few weeks were suffocating. Daniel's family bombarded me with messages, urging me to reconsider. My relatives whispered behind my back, some blaming me for not keeping my marriage together. But my parents, oh, my parents were my fortress. My mother held my hand when tears wouldn't stop at night, and my father, usually a man of few words, said something that echoed in my soul. "Daughter, you were not born to be someone's shadow. You were born to shine on your own." That night, I made a vow. I wouldn't just survive this betrayal, I'd rebuild my life bigger, stronger, brighter than before. And so began the hardest, yet most liberating, chapter of my journey. I took The first step by reopening the little passion I'd abandoned years ago, my dream of running a design business. I had studied fashion once, but marriage, expectations, and Daniel's disapproval had buried it. Now, I dug it out, dusted it off, and breathed life into it again. At first, it was just sketches on paper, designs that lived only in my notebooks. But then I began posting them online timidly, nervously. To my surprise, people noticed. Compliments trickled in, then collaborations, then small commissions. Every sale, no matter how small, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Meanwhile, Daniel's life wasn't as perfect as he pretended. The whispers reached me: business partners pulling away, rumors of debts piling up, and that shiny Lamborghini mistress flaunting herself at parties like a trophy. But beneath the glitter, cracks were showing. One night, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled on a photo that made me pause. There she was, Daniel's secretary, posing beside the Lamborghini. Except, her caption wasn't about love or loyalty. It was about upgrades and temporary blessings. It hit me then. She wasn't in love with him. She was in love with the money, the cars, the status. And Daniel, he was just her stepping stone. A bitter part of me wanted to laugh. Karma, I thought, was working its slow magic. Still, I refused to let his downfall consume me. My focus had to remain forward. I attended networking events, workshops, and seminars. I dressed myself in the confidence I once lost. Every time I walked into a room, I whispered to myself, "You are no longer Daniel's wife. You are Emily. Whole, capable, enough." And then, just when I was starting to believe it, life threw me an unexpected twist. A business exhibition, where I was showcasing my designs for the first time. I felt a pair of eyes on me. Strong, steady, familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I turned and saw him, Adrian, the man I once knew in college. The one who had quietly admired me from afar, but whom I had never given a chance, because back then, Daniel had overshadowed everything. Now, years later, Adrian stood there, successful, confident, and looking at me as though I had just stepped out of his memories. "Emily," he said softly, almost in disbelief. I froze. The past and present collided in one heartbeat, and, in that moment, standing under the lights of opportunity and possibility, I realized this wasn't just the end of my old life. It was the beginning of something new, something I hadn't dared to imagine. But was I ready to open my heart again? The question lingered, and deep down, I knew the answer wasn't simple. I thought I had seen it all. The betrayal, the audacity, the sheer shamelessness of Ethan. But what happened next shattered me all over again. It was a week after I left the mansion. I was still in my apartment, still gathering pieces of my heart, when the news broke. A luxury lifestyle magazine posted an article: billionaire Ethan Cross gifts Lamborghini Huracan to his loyal secretary, Madison Hart, calling her his lucky charm. The photos attached almost made me drop my phone. There was Ethan, grinning ear to ear, standing beside Madison as she posed in front of the gleaming Lamborghini. Her hand rested delicately on his arm. And worse, the car had a custom license plate. It read, M&H forever. Madison and Ethan. Forever. I couldn't breathe. My dowry, money, my future, my sacrifices, my trust had been poured into this public humiliation. He didn't just betray me privately anymore. He announced it to the world. My phone buzzed nonstop that day. Friends, acquaintances, even old colleagues messaged me with pity, shock, and sympathy. Some were kind: "Stay strong, you deserve better." Others, less so, guess money really can buy love. And then came the worst message of all. A text from my own mother. Nora, maybe you should forgive him. At least he's wealthy and can provide. Don't ruin your marriage over a secretary. Men will be men. My heart turned cold reading that. Even my own family didn't see my worth beyond Ethan's fortune. I had given up my dowry, my freedom, my dreams, and now they wanted me to give up my dignity too. That night, as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, scrolling through the endless gossip headlines, I made myself a promise. I would no longer cry for Ethan Cross. I would no longer beg for scraps of his loyalty. I would rise. And when I did, he would regret ever making me his pawn. So I got to work. Every day I woke up before dawn, drafting plans for my new business. I poured my skills, my heart, my very soul into building something of my own. I met investors, pitched ideas, and faced rejection after rejection, but I didn't stop, because every no fueled me. Every rejection reminded me of Ethan's smirk, his arrogance, his Lamborghini gift to Madison. And I vowed one day I'd build something so powerful, so undeniable, that even Ethan would choke on his pride. But fate had a twisted way of testing me again. 2 months later, I received an invitation. A charity gala hosted by none other than Ethan himself. The theme: celebrating love and loyalty in business. The irony almost made me laugh. Almost. The invitation wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. A taunt. A reminder that Ethan and Madison were thriving while I was, in his eyes, forgotten. But he underestimated me. That gala would not be my humiliation. It would be my stage. And for the first time since my world crumbled, I smiled, because I had a plan. The night of the gala arrived, shimmering with crystal chandeliers and golden lights reflecting off marble floors. The air was thick with the scent of roses, perfume, and power, because power, after all, is intoxicating. I walked in wearing a midnight blue gown, simple yet elegant, letting my confidence do the talking. I had done my hair in soft waves, minimal jewelry, no need to overdo it. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need Ethan's. But that didn't stop every eye from turning. There he was, Ethan Cross, smiling, holding Madison's hand like a trophy, as photographers snapped pictures. The crowd whispered, admiring the billionaire and his perfect partner. My stomach twisted, but I straightened my spine. I would not falter. I moved through the crowd, shaking hands, exchanging polite smiles, my mind calculating every move. The whispers were inevitable, isn't that? That's Ethan Cross's ex-wife. Look at her, she's stunning. Let them watch. Let them talk. Their eyes would follow me tonight, but not in judgment. They would follow me in respect. As I reached the center of the room, Ethan's gaze landed on me. For the first time in months, I saw a flicker of something unfamiliar in his eyes. Not arrogance, not confidence, not control. Fear. Madison noticed, too. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. Ethan quickly adjusted, trying to regain composure, but it was too late. I had arrived, and the room felt my presence. During the gala, I mingled strategically. I talked to investors, philanthropists, and influential guests, dropping subtle hints about my new business venture. Every word I spoke, every laugh I shared, every connection I made, it was a web weaving my future without Ethan or his money. And then came the first public twist. Ethan, growing increasingly uneasy at my poise and charm, tried to corner me. Emily, he said, voice low, attempting intimacy. We should talk. I looked at him calmly. There's nothing left to say, Ethan. You've made your choices. So have I, he tried again. Don't let pride ruin everything. I smiled softly, almost pitying him. No, Ethan. You ruined everything. I'm just cleaning up the pieces. His lips tightened. He realized, for the first time, that he couldn't intimidate me. The crowd around us murmured. Some guests began noticing the tension, sensing the history between us, and then Madison approached, all charm and confidence, but I noticed the subtle tremor in her hand as she clutched her champagne glass. I leaned slightly closer to Ethan, whispering just enough for him to hear. She's not going to be a pawn anymore, Ethan. And neither am I, he swallowed hard, his face paling slightly. And in that moment, I knew. The balance of power had shifted. By the end of the gala, I had made important connections. Investors had approached me, intrigued by my vision. Ethan and Madison, once untouchable, were beginning to feel the ripple of change. And I left the event with my head held high, a quiet confidence radiating from within. The Lamborghini, the betrayal, the humiliation, it didn't matter anymore. I was no longer a victim. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer under anyone's control, and this was only the beginning. The days after the gala were electrifying. I could feel the momentum building, each step taking me further from the shadows of betrayal and closer to my own independence. Emails poured in. Investors wanted meetings. Designers wanted collaborations. Clients wanted to see my concepts. My phone, once silent, buzzed relentlessly, and each notification felt like a small victory, a reminder that I was creating my own world, one piece at a time. Meanwhile, Ethan's carefully constructed empire began to show cracks. It started small. First, one of his key investors backed out, citing recent rumors of financial mismanagement. Then, whispers circulated in business circles about his questionable use of company funds that, unbeknownst to anyone else, had included part of my dowry. Even Madison, who had seemed untouchable, began to show signs of stress. At a private party, I overheard her whispering furiously into her phone, "I don't care what you say. He's spiraling. We need to be careful. Don't let her get wind of this." A small, satisfied smile crept onto my face. She was right. He was spiraling. And I wasn't even lifting a finger yet. I focused on my own empire. I officially launched my design brand, Luna and COC, starting with a modest but stylish online boutique. Each piece was inspired by resilience, independence, and sophistication, a subtle reflection of my journey. Orders came in faster than I anticipated. The media caught wind of my story, the woman who turned betrayal into triumph, and soon I was featured in several lifestyle magazines. Headlines read, "Emily Cross. From Heartbreak to High Fashion, the woman who turned dowry betrayal into a business empire." Every article, every mention, was a tiny dagger of poetic justice aimed at Ethan, though I never let that be my motive. I wanted this for me, not revenge. One afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor at my boutique, Adrian. The man from college who had quietly admired me years ago. Now, standing in my studio, looking effortlessly successful, he carried a portfolio under his arm. "Emily," he said, smiling, "I've been following your journey. I think we could collaborate on a project." I blinked. "Adrian." He held up a hand. "I know. You don't need to explain. Just hear me out. Your vision, it's incredible. And I think together, we could make something truly revolutionary." For the first time, I felt a spark of excitement that had nothing to do with heartbreak or betrayal. This was opportunity. This was connection. This was real. Meanwhile, Ethan received his first public shock. A major client withdrew a multi-million-dollar contract, citing concerns about management transparency. Another investor questioned his spending, particularly the extravagant gift to Madison. And just like that, the image of power, control, and untouchability began to crumble around him. It was ironic. The Lamborghini, meant to flaunt wealth and control, had become a symbol of his mismanagement and hubris. By the end of the month, my brand was gaining momentum. Adrian and I had established a creative partnership, and Ethan was fighting to keep a facade of control, but the cracks were visible to anyone paying attention. He tried to call me once, leaving a voicemail. "Emily, we need to talk. Forget the past. Let's fix this." I deleted the message. I didn't even listen, because there was nothing to fix. The past was gone. I had taken control of my present and the future. It was mine to build, free from anyone who had ever doubted my worth. By now, Lena and COC had become more than just a boutique. It was a brand, a statement, and a reflection of everything I had fought to reclaim. My dignity, my independence, my life. Orders were flooding in from every corner of the city. Collaborations were being proposed by top designers, and my social media following had grown exponentially. Every post, every campaign, every feature painted a narrative I had longed for, the woman who rose from heartbreak, stronger than ever. And all the while, Ethan's empire continued to crumble under the weight of his arrogance. He had tried to keep Madison close, to project an image of control and wealth, but even she had begun questioning his judgment. The media was relentless, highlighting the misuse of funds, the lavish gifts, and his inability to maintain business relationships. One afternoon, I received a tip through Leah, the investigative journalist, who had helped me uncover the truth about Ethan's finances. He's desperate. He's trying to liquidate assets, sell off properties, even offering Madison more money to keep quiet. But she's growing impatient. She wants the divorce finalized. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had betrayed me with Madison, lavished her with gifts funded by my dowry, and now she was the one pushing him toward accountability. I smiled quietly, sipping my coffee in the new office space I had secured for Lena and CO. Adrian was a constant presence now, but not in a way that threatened my independence. He was a partner, a creative equal, someone who valued my vision as much as I did. During one late-night session, we reviewed designs for the upcoming fashion show. "You've done incredible work," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Honestly, Emily, I've never seen anyone bounce back like this." I chuckled softly. I didn't bounce back. I built forward, one step at a time, and I meant it. Every stitch, every sketch, every calculated move in my life had been intentional. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Then came the tipping point. Ethan, in a last-ditch effort to reclaim some sense of control, sent an official statement to a major publication, painting Madison as the perfect partner and subtly implying I had been the problem all along. It was petty, desperate, and exactly what I needed. Within hours, Leah dug up the receipts, emails, and evidence of his mismanagement. The expose was released. From Dowry to Lamborghini, how a billionaire misused his wife's trust. The story went viral. The public finally saw the truth. Ethan's actions weren't just morally reprehensible, they were financially reckless. Madison, Realizing the extent of the exposure, publicly distanced herself, leaving Ethan isolated and humiliated, and I watched quietly from my office, knowing that justice wasn't about revenge, it was about truth and dignity. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. Ethan showed up at the entrance of Luna and COC, attempting the same arrogance he always carried. But this time, it faltered. "Emily," he said, voice low, trying to mask desperation, "we need to talk. This isn't how it should end." I looked at him calmly, the woman he once belittled now standing tall and unshakable. "It already has ended, Ethan," I replied evenly. "Not just our marriage, but your illusions of control. You've made your choices. I've made mine. Goodbye." For a brief moment, I saw the old arrogance slip, replaced by fear and regret, and I walked past him, leaving the shattered remnants of a man who once thought he could own me, into a future that I now commanded entirely on my own terms. The months that followed were transformative, not just for Luna and COC, but for me. Every challenge I had faced, the betrayal, the humiliation, the misuse of my dowry, had become a stepping stone. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was a creator, a visionary, a woman who had turned pain into power. Luna and COC officially launched its first major collection in a prestigious fashion exhibition. The theme was resilience, inspired by my journey. Each design told a story of heartbreak, of rising from ashes, of discovering strength within oneself. As I walked through the exhibition hall, seeing my creations displayed elegantly, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. The media, the clients, the investors, they weren't just impressed by the clothes. They were drawn to the woman behind them. And then Adrian arrived. He had been by my side throughout the late nights, the setbacks, the small victories. But tonight, as we stood together, I realized it wasn't just partnership, it was connection. "Emily," he said softly, "you've done more than just succeed. You've inspired. And I'm honored to be part of this journey." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't allowed myself in years. "Thank you, Adrian, for believing in me when I wasn't sure I could even believe in myself." He reached for my hand, a gesture simple yet profound, and in that moment, I knew this was not a replacement for what I had lost. It was a new beginning, built on trust, respect, and genuine affection. Meanwhile, the echoes of the past faded, but not unnoticed. Ethan's empire had crumbled further. Public exposure of his financial recklessness, coupled with Madison's departure, left him isolated and humiliated. I never rejoiced in his downfall. I simply moved forward, leaving him to face the consequences of his choices. And yet, in a way, seeing him stripped of the arrogance he had once wielded so cruelly was satisfying, not for vengeance, but for closure. One evening, as I closed the boutique after a long day, I sat by the window, reflecting on the path that had brought me here. I thought of the Lamborghini, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the fear and humiliation, and I smiled, because none of it defined me anymore. I had reclaimed my life, my dreams, my dignity. I had discovered my strength, and I had found love not in control, not in possession, but in partnership, in respect, in understanding with Adrian. Life was no longer about what I had lost. It was about what I had built, and as the city lights glimmered below, I whispered softly to myself, "This is just the beginning." With that, I turned off the lights, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life, not as Ethan Cross's wife, not as a victim, but as Emily Hull, independent, unstoppable, Some betrayals cut so deep, they change the course of our lives forever. He thought my silence was weakness, but in truth, it was the calm before my storm. The Lamborghini Huracan he bought with my dowry was never a symbol of their love, it was the tombstone of our marriage. What he didn't know was that in giving my heart, I had also given my loyalty, my patience, my future. And when he shattered it all for fleeting desire, he didn't just lose our wife, he lost the woman who once would have stood by him against the world. But here's the truth about love and betrayal. When one door closes, another opens. I found strength in my brokenness and peace in walking away. So to those listening, never let someone convince you that betrayal is love. Never let material gifts buy your silence. Know your worth, guard your heart, and when the time comes, walk away with your head held high. Because sometimes the end of us is only the beginning of me. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment revenge so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know where are you watching from. What do you want to hear from us in next video? If you have any incident in your life, please let us know. We would love to share your story. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy.